I have a lot of friends who play video games, but among them, very few who play fighting games. And that's a bummer because I love fighting games. But I also understand that it's not the easiest of genres to break into. While simple inputs, auto combos, and modern controls may make it easier for people to get in at a casual level, if you're not thinking about the buttons you're pressing, you're basically just playing a fancy video game version of Rock'em Sock'em Robots. And just like how you're not going to discover the depth of boxing by playing hours of Rock'em Sock'em Robots, you're also not going to learn what's fun about fighting games if you're just focusing on mashing single button auto combos. So if you're interested in fighting games but feel like you don't even know where to begin when it comes to learning how to play them or enjoy them on a deeper level, here are some tips to get good at them. The 2D ones anyway. Before we start, just a quick note. This is a massive topic that can cover everything from the most basic of basics to high-level concepts and techniques that you'll see pros utilize regularly. I actually tried to script out a video like this years ago, but it ended up getting so long that I couldn't imagine anyone who actually needed it actually watching it. So I'm going to try and keep the scope manageable and focus on what I believe to be the most essential things that you need to start you on your journey. And if people enjoy it, maybe I'll make a part 2. But for now, let's start with what I believe to be the number one most important thing when it comes to getting good at fighting games. The key to enjoying difficult games like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, and especially roguelites is to understand that dying is all part of the experience. Every death is a lesson, and part of the skill of those games is applying those lessons to future attempts and learning from your mistakes. But to have that clarity of mind to be able to do that, you have to be okay with failure. There's a common expression in the FGC: you have to get washed to get clean. And it's true. There's just too much information to take in when you first start playing any given fighting game. All the fundamentals, the system mechanics, everything your character can do, what your opponent's character can do, what's safe, what's punishable, etc. You can't expect to know how to deal with everything from the get-go. You have to absorb it over time. And the best way to do that is to go into your matches with a mindset that's focused more on learning than on winning. Eventually and inevitably, that mindset will shift once you feel like you've learned enough, but you always have to remind yourself that losing is part of the process, and that there's always more to learn. So don't let thoughts of, I suck, or this is too hard, ever stop you. You will improve, and the feeling of overcoming or learning how to better deal with a tactic or character that previously gave you trouble is one of the most powerful feelings in fighting games, and one part of what makes it such a special genre. Blocking is pretty much the most important skill you'll need to learn when playing fighting games. Fortunately, it's really easy. You just hold back to block standing and hold down back to block low. You'll generally want to default to blocking low as it blocks both low and mid attacks and also prevents you from backing yourself into the corner. Then you can switch to a standing guard to block jump-ins and overheads, which will break through a crouching block. Note that Mortal Kombat is unique in that you have a button that you have to hold down in order to block, which makes things a bit different when it comes to cross-ups, but that's something for another video. As for when you should block, basically whenever you're not committing to offense, you should have your finger or thumb hovering over the down back buttons, ready to block. But you especially want to be blocking when your opponent has the advantage over you. That means if they land a hit, you should be blocking. If they knock you down, you should be blocking. Unless you're doing what's called a hard read and intend on challenging their offense with either a wake up reversal, a jump out, or a quick button. Of course, the really hard part about blocking is knowing when it's your turn to go on the offensive, which is one of the things you'll have to absorb by playing over time. However, there are some mostly universal rules that you should keep in mind. If you block a jump attack, it is generally not your turn, so you should not press a button after blocking. This is why it's especially important to anti-air opponents, or hit them out of the air either with an air-to-air or air-invulnerable move. More on that later though. Characters with dive kicking special moves, which allow them to halt their aerial momentum and dive downwards at an angle, like Cammy in Street Fighter 6, are a little unique in that if their dive kick hits high on your guard, it's generally your turn, and may even be an opportunity to punish. But if they hit low, like around the feet, it's not your turn. There are some exceptions, but generally this is how dive kicks work in most 2D fighters. Special moves and attacks that have an exceptionally slow startup animation have a fairly good chance of being what's known as plus on block, which in fighting game terms simply means it's not my turn on defense. Examples of this include Ken's heavy Dragon Lash kick in Street Fighter, Soul's Fafnir in Guilty Gear Strive, Vi's charged S1 in 2x KO, etc. This isn't a hard rule as there are definitely slow moves that aren't plus on block, but these may make up for it by having a ton of pushback, dealing a lot of chip damage, maybe they have armor, etc. Many games also have universal techniques that allow the attacking player to keep their turn even if they're blocked, like Grand Blue Fantasy Vs. Forward Light Attack, commonly known as 6-6L, or Dragon Ball Fighter's homing attack while in sparking mode. There are also some universal rules of when it's your turn to attack after blocking.
You should feel generally safe going back on the offensive after blocking most special moves, as long as they don't have follow-ups. These type of special moves are called Rekkas.
Most sweep attacks, which are low-hitting heavy attacks most commonly found in Street Fighter, are almost always punishable. Reversal attacks, like Dragon Punches, and super moves are generally punishable as well. These are good rules to fall back on if you ever have to guess on whether it's your turn to attack. But as a general rule of thumb, if you press your fastest button after blocking something and notice that you're getting counter hit, you should make a mental note of that and say, okay, probably not my turn after I block that move. Alright, so now that you know when and how to block, and when you should switch to offense, let's focus on what you should be learning when you pick a character and take them into training mode. First off, pick a character that does what you want to do. If you want to play patiently, hanging back, throwing projectiles, and making it hard for your opponent to come to you, find a zoner character like Guile in Street Fighter, Axel in Strive, or Kain in Fatal Fury, just to name a few. If you don't want to focus on lengthy, difficult combos, and want to just bully your way in, land a couple of big throws, and call it a day, pick a grappler like Zangief or Potemkin. If you want to apply suffocating pressure and keep your opponent guessing on defense, find a rushdown character. Once you've got your character, focus on these three things primarily. How do I land a hit? What do I do when my opponent jumps? What do I do when I land a hit? Let's break down each of these individually. How to land a hit is hard to talk about generally because it really does depend on what game you're playing and what character you're using. A slower paced 2D fighter might favor a more patient and reactive style of poking, anti-airing, and capitalizing on your opponent's mistake, while something like 2XKO encourages a much more aggressive and mix-up heavy style of play. In any case, here are some of the ways you'll be landing hits in fighting games. Think of this like your toolbox, and credit to glossary.info.net for these definitions. When you're just starting out, in general, I'd recommend focusing primarily on the first three: poke, anti-air, and punish, and establishing a game plan of poking to discourage ground approaches, anti-airing when they inevitably start trying to jump in on you, and punishing when you block something punishable. As you get comfortable with those, or when you feel like you need more depth in your offense to match the rising skill level in your opponents, look to add in some more tools and build up your game plan from that starting foundation. As for what to do when the opponent jumps, this is where your anti-airs come in. Ideally, you'd have an anti-air combo that can punish someone heavily for trying to jump in on you, but even if it's just an anti-airing normal or special move, that's fine too. Practice anti-airing, and also think about what happens after the anti-air. Are they close enough that you can run up and pressure their wake up, or does it reset you back to the neutral position where you're back to poking? And what do I do when I land a hit? This is where it's time to put that combo you've been practicing to use. Remember that it's more important to learn an easy combo that you can land 100% of the time than it is to learn a harder, more damaging combo that you drop half the time or more. Most fighting games these days have perfectly serviceable combos that you can learn within the game's own teaching tools. Try to have a combo for the following situations. a quick light attack combo that you can use without spending any resources and can punish moves with a short punishment window, a more damaging combo that uses resources, whether that's an EX special move, a super move, or both, and typically comes out of a slower and stronger starting attack, a corner variation that can squeeze some extra damage in the corner, and ideally an anti-air combo. Just like with anti-airs, you also want to take note of the situation after you land a combo. Do you have time to pressure your opponent after your combo lands, or does it leave you too far away? Plan for what you're going to do after the combo ends so that you can either keep your pressure going or hang back to establish your zoning if that's where your character is strong at. Don't forget throws either. Throws will beat blocking and in some games are extremely strong and can lead to damaging combos by themselves. Start off with these three things, and once you feel comfortable with these fundamentals, that's when you can start looking into other ways to open your opponents up, either with high-low mix-ups, strike-throw mix-ups, frame traps, spacing traps to try and set up easier whiff punish opportunities, etc. You'll notice in the previous point that I left out jump-ins as one of your main methods of landing hits that you should focus on. That's because jump-ins, while extremely rewarding and easy to pull off, come with a lot of risk. A lot of new players use them as a crutch at low levels because most players in the lower ranks aren't great at anti-airing. This leads to a hard to break habit once you start climbing higher in the ranks and the players start picking up that you're a jumper, and they proceed to anti-air every single jump-in attempt you make. Similarly, wake-up reversals are a very powerful technique that can get an aggressive enemy off of you, but the risk-reward balance is not in your favor. You land an invincible reversal, you deal a decent chunk of damage, and reset the situation to neutral. That's not bad. But if they block it, you are very likely going to lose a substantial amount of life, and then just repeat that same situation. Now, of course, this isn't to say that you should never jump or do an invincible reversal. It's always good to show that you're willing to use them as a tool, and you can use the threat of them to get yourself out of bad situations. But you need to be extra careful not to become predictable, and primarily use them for when you think the opponent isn't looking for them. A big mistake that a lot of players make is that they learn a combo and then autopilot the whole combo regardless of whether their first hit was blocked or not. This is bad because a lot of the times the final hit of a combo is unsafe on block, which will lead to getting punished. So one of the skills that you will have to learn is what's known as hit confirming. So, for example, a very simple but effective Kami combo is light punch, crouching light kick, crouching light punch, light or medium spiral arrow. When I do this combo, I am autopiloting the 3 normal hits, but then I'm visually confirming whether or not the first 2 hits landed. If they did, then I would do the full combo, ending with spiral arrow. But if they don't, then I stop at light punch and switch to blocking, since light punch by itself is safe when blocked. This is a crucial skill, and I highly recommend practicing it by going into training mode, setting the dummy to random block, and letting the full combo rock if all the hits connect, and cutting it short if they're blocked. The most powerful techniques in modern fighting games are often the ones that every character gets to use. In Street Fighter 6, you have drive rushes, parries, and drive impacts. In Grand Blue, there's the aforementioned 6-6L. In Strive, you've got Roman cancels, active tags, and 2xKO, the list goes on and on. Again, there's just too much to go into every single one of these, so I'm just going to leave it as a general note that one of the best ways to get good at fighting games is to make sure that you have a firm grasp of what all the universal mechanics are and how you can use them to either open an opponent's guard, escape pressure, start your offense, or deal with something that's otherwise very cheap. As mentioned at the very beginning, there's so much more that we could cover, but this video is already pretty long for a beginner's guide, and if you did make it all the way to the end, well, thanks a bunch. I hope it helps. Thanks for watching, and for everything else in the world of video games, keep it here on IGN.